Hello and welcome to this presentation today called Looking Ahead, the Future of Community Risk Reduction. My name is Captain Mike Becerra and I'm honored to be presenting this material today. I'm currently employed at Southland County Fire and Rescue where I have worked for over 12 years. I have a bachelor's in Fire Service Administration and I'm currently enrolled in the Leadership and Executive Fire Management program at Waldorf University. Throughout this presentation, we will be discussing the following topics: the future of fire prevention, the fire service culture, working with citizens, the fire training, education, and professional development, challenges in the workforce and society, future challenges, CRR leadership within the fire department, and public safety personnel risk reduction. I would like to start this presentation with a motivational statement pertaining to CRR. Only together and through our combined efforts can we hope to combat the unforeseeable dangers in our future. So, discussing the future of fire prevention, we first need to ask ourselves, what is community risk reduction? What are the core components of a community risk reduction program? And then we'll look at some recent data from Oregon pertaining to community risk reduction efforts. So to start this presentation, I would first like to define what community risk reduction is. According to NFPA 1300, Community Standard for Community Risk Assessment and Community Risk Reduction Plan Development, community risk reduction is a process to identify and prioritize local risks, followed by the integrated and strategic investment of resources to reduce their occurrence and impact. For organizations who are planning to implement a CRR program, the following are the core components of the CRR framework. Emergency response. Could adding or enhancing emergency services improve community safety? Economic incentives. Could economic incentives or penalties encourage safer behavior? Education. Would altering Oregonians' knowledge, attitudes, and awareness related to their risks impact their behavior? Enforcement. Could passing, strengthening, or enforcing laws and rules impact risks? And engineering. Are there technological solutions such as products or materials that can help reduce risk? Looking specifically within Oregon, the following efforts have been conducted by the Office of State Fire Marshal, OSFM, to increase community risk reduction efforts. Fire Adapted Oregon. As a result of the passing of Senate Bill 762, OSFM created the Fire Adapted Oregon Initiative. This initiative utilizes an integrated and strategic investment of resources to reduce fires and its impact on the public. This initiative is founded on statewide data, science, new defensible space codes, trends, and the CRR framework. This initiative will provide organizations throughout the state training, planning, and technical assistance and access to data and strategic investment resources to reduce wildfire risks at the local level. Defensible Space Code. Looking specifically at the threat of wildfires in Oregon, OSFM has adopted a statewide minimum defensible space code on lands that meet the definition of the wildland-urban interface and establish rules pertaining to enforcement in high and extreme areas. OSFM is also actively engaged with organizations throughout the state to develop a comprehensive statewide map that identifies the wildland-urban interface and risk levels. Response Ready Oregon. This is another program that was developed after the passing of Senate Bill 762 to better prepare Oregon for the impact of wildfires. This program will improve the Oregon Fire Service mutual aid system by modernizing technology systems and increasing capacity. The components of Response Ready Oregon are modernize systems and technology at the appropriate scale to support the Oregon Fire mutual aid system, assist the Oregon Fire Service by creating and enhancing the local and regional mutual aid plans, assist the Fire Defense Corps chiefs during initial attack, assessing a fire, and requesting conflagration if necessary. regional inventory of apparatus, fire season readiness reviews, and assisting in determining fire service gap needs. I'd now like to discuss fire service culture. When determining the future of community risk reduction, one must first look at the culture of an organization to determine the viability of community risk reduction efforts. Culture can be defined as the customary beliefs, social norms, and material traits of a racial, religious, or social group. When trying to determine the fire service culture of the organization as it pertains to CRR, the following must be considered. Traditionally, public and fire life safety education has not received the same support as firefighting and EMS services. Internal support of CRR is critical, and it must begin at the organizational level. CRR should be built into the mission statement of an organization, and it must clearly relate to the daily activities that all personnel perform. The key to building organizational support is connecting people to the community they serve and the risks that both civilians and responders face within the community. Organizational direction that is clearly defined and stated should be sufficient. However, motivating individuals to engage in new responsibilities such as public education is clearly about connecting the mission to their personal value system. When trying to develop a CRR program, working with citizens and community outreach will be essential. For an organization to implement a successful CRR program, there needs to be more than just a response-based system. Outreach to the community served is essential, and the organization's leader, the fire chief, must take this first step. For an organization to reach large, diverse groups and to establish networking among communities, marketing is key. Marketing is often thought of as selling something. However, it is not necessarily about selling, but motivating changes in behavior. To market CRR to the community and citizens we serve, we have to sell the idea of what CRR encompasses and how it will make the communities they live in a safer place. With a focus on values-driven marketing, fire departments can utilize innovative strategies to share their message and solicit community support. In regards to the task of motivating educator groups to prepare for creating effective and diverse fire safety education programs, the first thing an organization must understand is that public fire and life safety education is a dynamic part of what has become distinctively known as community risk reduction, and incorporating fire and life safety education in the mission of the organization is imperative in marketing it as a fundamental responsibility of all involved. Looking more closely at the educators chosen to teach and implement these programs, the following should be considered. Passion and motivation are the most defining traits of an effective public fire and life safety educator. They must want to be in a position, have a clear vision of what can be accomplished, and be confident they can make an impact in their role. Interpersonal dynamics and the ability to interact with people are key. These individuals must connect with all the public and not just one specific target audience. Those with advanced training or degrees in education are highly desirable because of their ability to develop programs and measure outcomes. When recruiting or hiring individuals for these positions, look for traits that will be utilized successfully for education programs. Use public fire and life safety education as a benchmark and prerequisite in officer qualifications. Stressing the importance of the organizational commitment and emphasis on fire and life safety education will help change the fire service culture. Those charged with the responsibility of developing, delivering fire and life safety education should be aware that many programs within the target audience and risks have already been developed and are readily available, and the educators should research and utilize these resources. Looking a little more closely at training, education, and professional development, now that we have discussed the selection process for educators who will be responsible for creating and implementing a CRR program, let's look at the training, education, and professional development requirements that will help them be successful. Training. Training can be defined as the mastery of hands-on skills and abilities. Education can be defined as informative material, cognitive learning, and critical thinking skills usually acquired in settings such as conferences, seminars, and college classes. Professional development. Professional development can be thought of as a process of offering every member an opportunity to progress, improve, develop, and promote. This is an essential component of CRR as it inherently leads into succession planning, which is essential in terms of ensuring that qualified, competent, and experienced individuals are prepared to perform at the next level and keep the organization moving forward. Some recommended requirements for CRR educators are NFPA 1021, Standard for Fire Officer. This standard prepares a firefighter for taking leadership position within the organization, and this standard presents job performance requirements for Fire Officer 1, 2, 3, and 4. NFPA 1033, Standard for Fire Investigator. This standard encompasses professional growth in both fire and legal disciplines and provides training and education in the investigation of fires, explosions, and other property-destroying events of suspicious or accidental origin. NFPA 1035, Standard for Public Fire and Life Safety Educator. This standard describes the progressive levels of competency required for the public fire and life safety educator. Knowledge required for achieving certification in this standard ranges from techniques of building construction, general fire hazards, suppression systems, and a familiarity with all applicable community codes and standards. This standard presents the job performance requirements for public fire and life safety educator 1, 2, 3, as well as public information officer. NFPA 1041. This standard establishes the minimum professional levels of competence required of fire service instructors. This standard presents the job performance requirements for instructor 1, 2, and 3. As we look into the future to determine how we will provide CRR programs to our citizens and what they will look like, we must consider the workforce and societal changes that will come along as well. Change in technology in the workforce. Tradition will continue to drive what we do in the fire and EMS industry, but the rapidly changing technology will guide the way in which we will do it. Many significant changes will occur in the manner of improved communication systems and timelier information, more advanced equipment, built-in fire protection systems and early warning detection, and a change in attitude and culture, hopefully one that will embrace the importance of CRR. As we try and determine societal changes, we must consider the following. Since 1970, our worldwide median age has grown by almost a decade. By 2100, it's projected to increase by another 10 years. Some of the economic risks for an aging population group include rising healthcare costs, a shrinking workforce, and economic slowdowns. Urban evolution. In the future, it's projected that many regions of the world will experience rapid urbanization. By 2050, it's projected that over 2/3 of the global population is expected to live in urban settings. The rise of megacities. The future will give rise to a boom in megacity growth as people continue to migrate to urban areas for socio-economic reasons. And environmental pressures. The continued change in our global population size, wealth, and consumption habits will have far-reaching consequences. Various factors will contribute to increasing global temperatures, the major source being human-produced greenhouse gas emissions. Rising temperatures will pose a risk to our ecosystems and livelihood by changing weather patterns and putting the global food supply at risk. As we head into the future, we must also consider some challenges that organizations will face due to the changes in technology, society, and the workforce. The following topics should be explored by organizations to prepare. Reduce funding for organizations. The biggest concern that organizations must consider is the slashing of fire service in the form of fewer stations, less staffing, fewer resources, and less money. As we look across the nation, clearly the economy is driving the push to reduce expenditures in government, and some cities are losing their tax base while others are just choosing to lower taxes. The potential result of lost revenue in the future could lead to personnel reductions and a change in the level of service that organizations are able to provide. a reduction in the occurrence of fires. Well, according to the NFPA, the number of fires and the damage caused by fires have reduced in the recent years. I predict that this trend will continue. With the increased improvement in technology in the form of fire suppression systems and alarm systems, this trend could continue and decrease the need for fire service personnel. A changing fire environment. Now and in the future, the fire service is in a position where the fire environment is changing around them. To operate safely in the future, the fire service has to work with engineering and scientific communities. Changes in building contents and construction practices will continue to shrink the safe operational time frame in which the fire service operates. As a result, a reassessment of strategies, tactics, and training material will become more important than ever. I would now like to talk about CRR leadership within the fire department. Community risk reduction can be thought of as how fire chiefs lead and manage to serve their community. For organizations to successfully implement and manage community risk reduction programs in the future, the first step begins with the chief officers of an organization understanding that CRR is a leadership and management philosophy. Chief officers must understand that CRR is not just a position, title, slogan, goal, or section of the department. It needs to be incorporated into the way our mission, vision, values are created. We can also look at CRR as a leadership and management tool. If we, as a fire service, are looking at CRR as anything other than the fire chief's way to lead and manage the fire department to serve the community, we are shortchanging them. CRR must be set as the priority by chief officers because it is the reason that we exist. We also need to do a better job of utilizing CRR to lead and manage our fire departments. Moving forward, chief officers will need to understand that CRR requires us to continually identify our community's risks through data and local knowledge, and then apply strategies and tactics to reduce them. If, as an organization, we are constantly utilizing these risks to develop our plans, goals, and processes, we are properly leading and managing our departments to serve our community. In the future, chief officers will be tasked with changing the culture of their organizations to embrace CRR. They can do this by creating the understanding that CRR is what we signed up for and it is what the fire service is. Chief officers take action and lead and manage our fire departments with CRR to better serve our communities, and we serve and protect our communities by reducing the frequency, severity, and duration of emergencies. So, let's take a closer look at public safety personnel risk reduction. Organizational risk management is the first topic I'd like to discuss. As we plan to implement community risk reduction, we must also consider and plan organizational risk management. The responsibility of a manager to safeguard the assets of their organization is just as applicable to an emergency response as to any business or family. Although our mission will be to manage community risk, fire departments and other emergency service organizations must also be concerned with risk to themselves. To accomplish this task, a risk manager in a fire department must protect public assets, including its personnel, facilities, and equipment, as well as making sure the emergency service organization can perform its mission. We also must determine operational risks. Chief officers must understand that some risks are unavoidable and are accepted as part of the duty of a firefighter or a member of the public emergency response team. However, chief officers must also understand that some risks are simply too great to take, and conditions or circumstances that exist in which the proper response is to not take action that could place the lives of responders in danger. Although we cannot always eliminate danger from the workplace, we can reduce the risk to injury or death if we identify the nature of the threat, determine the risk potential based on signs and symptoms, Incorporate risk management practices into the plan for conducting operations. We must also plan to manage risk. There are many tools for a chief officer to effectively manage the risk of their organization and personnel, and rewriting the book is often not necessary. The NFPA adopted NFPA 1500, Standard on Fire Department Occupational Safety, Health, and Wellness Program in 1987. And it served as the first consensus standard to directly address many issues that are related to the avoidance of injuries, fatalities, and occupational illnesses that emergency response personnel experience while performing their duties. A chief officer can adopt the elements of the risk management plan as outlined in NFPA 1500 and apply it to all aspects of fire department operations and activities. The elements of the risk management plan that can be applied to an organization are as follows: risk identification, risk evaluation, establishing priorities for action, risk control, other methods of control, and risk management, monitoring, and follow-up. In regards to public safety, personal risk reduction, the primary focus of a chief officer now and in the future should be the application of risk management concepts to the operational practice of fire departments. Chief officers should have the goal to improve the performance of their organizations and reduce the risk their communities, their organizations, and their individual members face virtually every day. So now we've reached the summary and questions part of the presentation, and I would like to end by talking about how an organization can prepare for the future of community risk reduction. As an organization attempts to look into their future to determine the CRR needs of their organization and the community they serve, there are some aspects of factors that can be predicted. However, there is a lot of uncertainty that remains. For an organization to be successful in implementing CRR in the future, they must recognize the expectations for the future fire service and understand that they will face a world of new prospects along with the present services currently provided. Our chief officers must understand that our fire and EMS services face an uncertain and challenging future, one that will bring both challenging and opportunistic prospects. And for any chief officer or organization that has fears of unknown as we move forward into the future, remember that the future does not contain any threat that the present is not already preparing us to overcome. I'd like to thank you for attending this presentation and hope every one of you has learned something of value that you can bring back to your organization. I know we covered a lot of topics and information in the past 20 minutes, so I would now like to open up for any questions that you may have so I can provide some clarity. Thank you.